Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I'm also the host of Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight, and I'm the editor of the anthology, which you should run out and buy, called Moms Don't Have Time to, a Quarantine Anthology. All proceeds of that book go to COVID-19 vaccine research. And I'm the editor-in-chief of Moms Don't Have Time to Write, a new publication on Medium, and we're accepting submissions, so please send your personal essays there. And if all that isn't enough, you can follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and my website is zibbyowens.com. Okay, now back to this amazing podcast. Emily Giffin is the author of The Lies That Bind. She is a Chicago native and graduated summa cum laude from Wake Forest University and the University of Virginia School of Law. After law school, she moved to Manhattan and practiced litigation at a large firm for several years while she paid back her school loans, wrote a novel in her very limited spare time, and dreamed of becoming a writer. Despite the rejection of her first manuscript, Emily persisted, retiring from the legal profession and moving to London to pursue her dreams full-time, which we talk about in this episode. It was there that she began writing Something Borrowed, 2004, a story of a young woman who, upon turning 30, finally learned to take a risk and follow her heart. 1 year later, her own gamble paid off as she completed the manuscript, landed an agent, and signed a 2-book deal on both sides of the Atlantic. The following summer, Something Borrowed, hailed as heartbreakingly honest debut with dead-on dialogue, real-life complexity, and genuine warmth, became a surprise sensation. And Giffin vowed never to practice law again. Dubbed a modern-day Jane Austen by Vanity Fair and a dependably down-to-earth storyteller by the New York Times, she has since written 8 more New York Times bestsellers, including Something Blue in 2005, Baby Proof 2006, Love the One You're With 2008, Heart of the Matter 2010, Where We Belong 2012, The One and Only 2014, First Comes Love 2016, and All We Ever Wanted 2018. All of her novels, filled with endearingly flawed characters and emotional complexity, have resonated deeply with both critics and readers around the world, achieving bestseller status in a number of countries, including the United States, Canada, UK, France, Brazil, and Poland. The books have been translated into 31 languages, with over 11 million copies sold worldwide. In addition, 5 of her novels have been optioned for the big screen, or in various stages of development. The first, Something Borrowed, hit theaters in May 2011, starring Kate Hudson, Ginnifer Goodwin, and John Krasinski. Emily now resides with her husband and 3 children in Atlanta. Her 10th novel, The Lies That Bind, was released on June 2nd, 2020. Welcome, Emily. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Okay, so much to talk about. Can we start by talking about your most recent book, which is so good? I am obsessed with these characters still. Oh my gosh. I feel like I am this girl in this book. And anyway, tell listeners what it's about and then we can talk more about it.
Well, thank you so much, by the way. I like thinking of you sharing some things in common with our heroine, Cecily. Yeah, the book is about a young reporter, and she's in her 20s. She moves to New York from the Midwest, and she's trying to establish herself and her career. And she breaks up with a guy, and is sort of, not really sure what her life is going to be and what it's looking like when she meets this other guy and falls madly in love with him, only to discover that there's a lot of mystery to him. So she isn't really sure what he's all about. And so the book is really about uncovering, trying to figure out who this guy is, who he is, spoilers. And so doing, trying to figure out who she is, because I think a lot of what we do in relationships is we get to know people, we get to know ourselves as well. So she ends up really trying to solve some mysteries about herself as well.
Wow. Well, part of the reason I related is I was in my 20s on 9/11. I was right there. I lost my best friend. She worked in the North Tower. So I was posting those signs, the ones of Grant. But all your references took me back in a way that I hadn't had before. Like having Dido on the first page of your book, I was like, oh my gosh, I thought that was our song. Do you know what I mean? And I eventually went to a Dido concert after, and it was this.
Oh, you did?
Fest. Yes. It was at the Beacon on the Upper West Side, the Beacon. Anyway.
Yeah.
But you have all these cultural.
I saw Tracy Chapman there.
You saw Tracy Chapman?
I saw Tracy Chapman there. Yeah.
I love her.
So we really shared a time and a place, you and I. And
so were you must have been there, right?
I was an attorney. I worked in the MetLife building, and I practiced law for 5 years. And so in that sense, I could really sort of relate to Cecily. I was in my 20s, late 20s. And I had quit my job as a lawyer I'd written a book. It took me 5 years because I was practicing law. So it took me like 5 years. Ultimately was rejected. And I decided in really the summer of 2001 that I was going to quit, my job as a lawyer, leave my law firm and go try to write another book. If I had stayed at my firm, I knew it was going to take me another 5 years or more to write another one because of, the amount of time that you log as a young associate at a New York City law firm. Although I managed to write some of that first book while I was, supposed to be billing GE and Philip Morris and all these other clients. I'd be working on my manuscript. But anyway, ultimately it was rejected. And so I decided I was going to quit my job and then move to London and try again and write another book. So my flight was it was really crazy timing, Zibby. It was September 16th, 2001. So my going away party was like on that Saturday night, which I guess was that the 9th or the 8th? I'm trying to do the math on that, but that weekend. And, my last day of work was whatever the Friday before the 11th was. So like the 6th or 7th. And my flight was on the 16th. And so obviously no flights went out on the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. But the 16th was the first day they let flights go, and I had an international flight. So it was one of the very first international flights. And as I, boarded that plane, of course, it was terrifying. Everyone was terrified. We were all sort of silent. But on top of it, I wasn't just, flying somewhere for work or for, a vacation. I was moving and I was leaving the city. So I felt incredibly conflicted and almost guilty. I mean, rationally, I knew that nobody, sure, my friends were going to miss me or whatever, but New York didn't need me. New York doesn't need any one person. But I still felt this sense of guilt that I was flying out of there, leaving my country, leaving my city. You could still see smoke at that point, ground zero as you took off. And so it was a very bizarre time. And when I got to London, I just really threw myself into the writing of the book. I think we all escape, these things in different ways to the extent we can. I knew some people too. I didn't have a best friend like you. I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, I can't imagine just having known a few people what it would have been like to actually be the person in charge of sort of those placards that people were hanging. And I'm so sorry for you and so many others. But yeah, it was just, for me, it was an escape. So I started writing Something Borrowed, which in that fall, so fall of 2001, September of 2001, I started writing that book. And, one of the themes of that first book of Something Borrowed, and also I think The Lies That Bind is that feeling of being in your late 20s and trying to figure out who you are and what you want. And sometimes we look for that in a relationship. I mean, we can do that in all ages. I was about to say we make that mistake at all ages, because I think in many ways it is a mistake to, try to find your identity in a relationship and have your life path kind of revolve around that. But there are times when that does work. So I shouldn't be overly simplistic about that. But for me, it was, I was about to turn 30. I was leaving a career that I did not like and that I was not fulfilled by, and trying to write this book. So I could relate to Rachel and Something Borrowed in those ways. And I think Cecily, it was the same for her. She was, so I could very much relate to her in her journey and that's sort of why I used, 9/11. And I should say for those who, haven't read the book, it's a small part of the story. And I really could have said it in any time. And in fact, the real appeal of setting it when I said it was because of that sense of before and after. So, really some of the book takes place when they met, when the main characters meet, Cecily meets Grant. It's the summer of 2001, which, I mean, I'm sure you feel the same having lived it, but doesn't that feel like this last summer of innocence, like true innocence?
Yes.
It's like before and after. I mean, I know in a lot of ways we recovered. Of course, life always goes on. We move on. But to me, it's like that summer of 2001 and everything before first of all, it dovetailed with what was happening in my life and my 20s. And so for me personally, that's how I see it. But, when I think back to the places we went, the bars we went out to, and the whole Sex and the City era. I mean, it was, the Sarah Jessica Parker and the Sex and the City and getting together. I mean, it all felt changed after 9/11. And it was weird too, because the book came out last June in hardcover. It's out in paperback now, of course, but last summer it came out in hardcover on June 2nd. And I didn't know when I was writing the book. I think I turned my final pages in to my editor in February. And I barely heard of, coronavirus or COVID. And although, of course, Black Lives Matter has been something that's like been, building in importance and, something that's been, in our collective consciousness and that we've all been thinking about for years. I mean, it really sort of June of last year is when this was really, George Floyd and everything, just the whole world seemed to be changing all at once with COVID and, worldwide pandemic and, Black Lives Matter and everything else. And so I felt like once again, we were in one of those moments of before and after. Like when you think back to holiday parties in 2019, getting dressed and putting on your heels and your red lipstick and going out without a mask, not, maybe you would see those signs at the airport that said, if you've been to, Wuhan, China, like it just felt so removed from anything, we really were thinking about. And now, of course, we're coming out of it, but I think we'll always all be able to look at the summer of 2020 and remember what we were doing. And in the sense that Cecily examined her life internally, like this big external thing happened with 9/11, but the book's really more about her internal journey after that. And I think that is so true for all of us. I mean, how many, Zibby, I have probably 4 or 5 friends who are getting a divorce, which is, very sad, but in some ways it's like a fresh start and it's what they should be doing. And it's wonderful news in some ways, but I feel like that happened and things were accelerated, because there was so much, time of self-reflection and internal, inward thinking about, is this the life we're meant to be living? And are we happy? And we're happy with our jobs and our careers? And maybe we don't want to be going into work every day and to an office, or maybe we don't like our career at all. Or maybe we don't like our spouse, or, maybe we want to jettison one of our friends who we thought was a real friend and they're not, being sensitive enough to what was happening with the George Floyd moment. Maybe they were trivializing it, or maybe they didn't post a black square, or we thought that they were blowing things off. I mean, so many different things were happening that it was the world, that stage that things were happening in, but our lives, I think, changed because of it, because of that internal reflection. But did you find that to be true with friends in your life and people in your life, that a lot of people's lives kind of shifted direction last year, or is that just a coincidence?
I don't think it's a coincidence. I think like all the data supports that that's happened far and wide. In my immediate circle, not as much, but I found the biggest difference with my own like close girlfriends after 9/11, because like losing someone in our core group made all of us like rethink what we were doing. Right. Like I was at business school at the time and I thought I would have a marketing career. And I mean, I guess I kind of do in a way, because you have to market everything you do anyway. But yeah, I mean, there were just so many parallels, and not to like, I mean, that summer before I was in the city, I met this new guy at Tortilla Flats at like 2 a.m. We had like a summer whirlwind romance. And like, I was like, oh my gosh, I could have been like Grant and me in this book. This is crazy.
That really is
and
wild.
We like whisked off to Rio and like did all these weird things I've never done in the rest of my life. Not that that's weird, but just like spontaneous,
Sure.
And then of course life changed the way it did here. And I don't mean to overemphasize this element of your book, because, there's also these like romantic little jaunts they had first, and the dating but all of that stuff. It was like, eating pancakes with Florent in the middle of the night. Anyway, all this stuff was just like of the moment. I know. And then,
we could have been at the same places at the same time. That's crazy.
Our paths have probably crossed, because there's so much, although then you left and I came back. And then I also did what you did. So after business school, I was like, actually forget it. That's not what I want to do. And I wrote a book, and then that book didn't sell. And I was like, now what? Anyway, I just had like so many things. Of course, I did not go on to write Something Borrowed.
I did not go on to have a best-selling, amazing podcast. So we're not best-selling, but podcast. But yeah, things just tend to, to work out in interesting ways. But it really was a moment. And I love that we shared that and that you shared that with Cecily as you read the book. Were you, not to ask your a veiled way of asking your age, but how old were you that summer?
I'm very open about my age. I'm 44. I'll be 45 in 2 months. Oh my gosh. I'm going to have to start saying I'm 45. I'm 44 now. So I'm going to just hang my hat on that.
Okay. So we're 5. So you're born in 77?
76.
76. Okay. The bicentennial year.
Yes. I have a little pillow still.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. I was, I'm 5 years older than you. So I was in the parade, the bicentennial parade.
Oh my gosh.
Marching with my little red, white, and blue drum and my bunny costume. For some reason I had that. But so, yeah, I was turning, so you were 25 about that summer. I was about to turn 30. So you're about to turn 45. I'm about to turn 50 next year. And I'm here to say, don't worry about anything until you're 48. That's the real moment. You still have like a window. And it's like you fall off the cliff after that. So.
I just read like this morning, there's a new book coming out in January called Midlife Bites, like a play on reality bites by Jen Mann, who wrote, I just like people I want to punch in the throat. Anyway, it's all about like what to expect in like the most sort of irreverent way. And I was like, oh, okay. Thank you. I am now warned of everything. Oh, some has already started, some has not, but thank you for that. Yeah. I feel like there's not a lot of, there needs to be more solidarity as we all.
I know. I take great comfort in I think we all, depending on our age, have certain celebrities that we kind of look to and be like, it's all going to be okay. Because Jennifer Aniston turned 50.
Right.
And she's happy, and she looks great. Yep. So there's always still hope. But
Paulina Porizkova, she's like in her bathing suit all the time. Look at her.
I know.
Not that I looked like her before, but somehow when I get that age, I'm going to turn into her. Oh my gosh, I wish. Yeah. Anyway, the part of your story though that really struck me is you're like, okay, well then my book didn't sell, so I decided to write another one. Like I was not as brave and I actually ended up ghostwriting a book after that because I was like, okay, well that's fine, then I'll write, but I don't have to like put my heart on the line again. How did you like steel yourself, and how do you even where did you find that determination, I guess?
Yeah, I don't know. You characterized it as brave. And I really think that's, I don't think that's a fair characterization, because it was really more about how much did I hate what I was doing versus how much did you hate what you were doing? Sometimes like misery can be really, motivating. It's almost like the people who, if you leave a relationship where the guy's like cheating on you left and right and he's terrible and he makes you miserable and he degrades you, and like, that's like great that you liberate yourself from that. And it's great if you liberate yourself from a job where you're really miserable. Like that still, requires some level of gumption. But I think the real kind of bravery is when you leave those just good enough situations, when you're getting a really nice paycheck and you don't hate what you're doing, like, but you also don't feel super fulfilled, or you're with a guy who's like perfectly nice and great on paper, but you don't, feel necessarily in love, but you feel like you're at the right age and you get married anyway. I think the people who walk away from those careers and those relationships are really the brave ones compared to, what I was doing at the time. But, it did, I will own that it did take a certain amount of determination. So, and, and a certain amount of, I guess like having some faith in myself. And, I'm grateful looking back that I had that like, crushing disappointment really of working for something for 5 years and getting an agent, which they always say is the hard part. Well, they say like, oh, if you get an agent, like you're in really good shape to get published. Well, I got an agent and it wasn't published, but I'm grateful now for that, because I feel that I appreciated it so much more when it did happen with Something Borrowed. And also, as a parent, you have 3 children, they're teenagers now. My twin sons were born in New Year's Eve 2003. So just 6 months before Something Borrowed came out. And then my daughter's, a few years younger than that, but you have that built-in story of, the disappointments that have come along the way. And the older you get, the greater the disappointments in some way. I mean, I guess it's all relative. I remember my son, George, had an own goal in soccer And he was so happy because he thought he had like scored a goal for his team, and it's sinking realization that it was an own goal. And oh my gosh. And, he's like, I've never felt worse in my whole life and I'll never get over it. And I'm like, yes, you will get over it. Like, but it was a good reminder to me as a mother that things are so relative.
Totally. I also have twins, by the way. I'm just going to copy your life here. I have twins. They were born in 2007. And then I waited 6 years, she waited 6 years to show up. Then I had a daughter and then another son after that, 17 months later.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So I'm well aware of like the value of all of my failures.
2007 was what month were your twins?
June. They just turned 14.
Okay, right. My daughter Harriet just turned 14 in May.
Oh, okay.
So we were pregnant at the same time.
We should get them together. I have a really cute son.
I know. Okay, right. So he's okay. And Harriet's, well, I shouldn't say anything about. I've made an effort not to say anything about their personal lives.
I know.
Now that they're teenagers,
but I think everybody thinks their son and daughters are cute. So I'll just leave it
at that. No. I think we should introduce him. Is he on Instagram?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
We'll have to do this privately because I never tag him or anything. Yeah. So the book that I wrote right after 9/11 was very similar sort of to this, although not as interesting a plot, but it was about like a couple that sort of gets together with 9/11 sort of at the centerpiece of it. And I did get an agent like you, and we sent it out. Although in retrospect, if I could like go back to myself then, well, first of all, I don't think the book was good enough, but I would have sent it out to more people because a lot of the agents, a lot of the publishers at the time said that it was too soon, that nobody wanted to read about 9/11 in fiction. And now I'm like, okay, 20 years later, I'm reading your book, which is amazing. And I'm totally ready to read about it in fiction. And now I actually have a memoir coming out next September or a year from September called The Book Messenger. And I just like finished writing like all of the stuff that happened to me at this time. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like the real.
That is wild. I love that.
Anyway, I'll have to send it to you.
Well, would you ever, pull that manuscript out and work on and resubmit it?
You know what? I included, I feel like, enough of the pieces that were at the center. Well, I turned it into a novel. I wrote it like 4 times. I shouldn't make this about me. But anyway, I wrote that book. I wrote that book like 4 times. I wrote it first as a memoir, and then I wrote 2 separate drafts of it as a novel. And I've tried that actually. I ended up like getting married. I got divorced. I started a new relationship who I then remarried this guy. So then I wrote another memoir that I turned into a novel called 40 Love about finding love again at 40. Both of those like didn't work.
Wait, did you remarry the same guy?
No, I remarried a new guy.
Oh, okay. I have Harriet has a friend whose mother got a divorce and then married the same guy. So
I married a new guy. I remarried in general. Anyway, point is I keep trying to like turn memoir into novels to like disguise things, but it's not working. I am just like writing fiction. I'm just much better at writing real life. Well,
for now, you never know though.
For now.
I could take some of those parts of that didn't deal with 9/11 and rework it into a novel. I think that would be.
Anyway, all to say, I took bits and pieces of both of those abandoned projects and threw them into my memoir. So for the parts that were true. So we'll see if it works.
Here's another similarity and something that I don't think I've ever talked about this in an interview ever. And whatever, this is 15 years, but I got a divorce too after a year of marriage.
No way.
Fun fact. So we have that in common too.
Oh this is gosh. Crazy. What else? Are you a Leo?
No, Pisces.
Okay. All right. Fine. Summer camp?
We could go there. We could work on that. Yeah.
Well, we can take it offline.
Maybe we could write a novel together about summer camp, and I'd be the counselor since I'm 5 years older. And,
perfect. I'll be the camper crying and wanting to go home.
Yeah. Same.
Eating too many cookies.
Perpetually homesick.
Oh my gosh. I was just saying, because my kids are not going to sleepaway camp this summer, and they're all going to be at like day camps and counselors and stuff, that I got like so sad my first summer at sleepaway camp because I was 8 years old and I went away for 8 weeks, and that was like not good for my personality in any way. And I learned how to make butter and sugar sandwiches. So I would take the like white springy Wonder Bread and like put all this butter on and then slather on the sugar, and I could like still feel the like crystals of sugar. Anyway, that's how I got through sleepaway camp.
That sounds so incredibly comforting.
It was. Yeah, it was great.
So who wrote that book? I can't think of her name. Quiet, about introverts. Susan
Cain, maybe? Susan
Yeah,
Cain.
yeah. I think that sounds right. Susan, one syllable last name. And if you haven't, if your listeners haven't read that, definitely pick it up. But also she does a podcast or TED Talk about it. So sort of condensed version. But in that she talks about summer camp and how some kids are just not meant for summer camp. And I was not meant for it. And that's why I've never, my daughter Harriet's at camp today, but it's like day camp. She comes home at night and gets in her own bed. And are you an introvert?
I am not. I think I am an extrovert, but I have a lot of social anxiety, or I used to at least. So I've been very shy my whole life until now, I guess. But I like to be around people. But then I do need to regroup. I don't know. I feel like I don't have a clear-cut answer. I keep taking quizzes and it's not clear. How about you?
I guess there has to be someone that's truly right smack dab in the middle. So maybe that's you. But I do think I've described myself as a socially adept introvert. Hopefully for the most part, I'm socially adept, but I feel like I can fake it really well. And so people sometimes are like, how, you're not an introvert, you're talkative. I'm like, that's not the definition of an introvert. Right. So maybe it should come down to, do you like summer camp? Maybe it should come down to that. But
yeah, I was reading the whole time at summer camp. I have a lot of independent tendencies. I love to read. I love to write. I would be fine spending the entire day by myself.
Okay, you're an introvert. Zibby, for real, you have to watch this, either read Quiet or watch her TED Talk. And I think, because there's a whole section on that. Okay, when you were growing up, did you like the group projects? Hated, right?
Hated group projects.
Yeah, you're an introvert.
Yeah.
You're just fooling yourself because you can go out. You can go out and have a good time and be social, but that's not what the definition is. It's more about, just watch.
I'll do more research on it.
Yeah. And then come back to me.
Yeah.
Because I like to think of you as a kindred spirit on this one.
I definitely, now that there are things opening up, I'm not like, oh, thank God. I'm like, oh no, really?
Oh no.
Do I need to do that? How many of these things do I need to do? I like to plan it. If I'm the one, I like to throw parties. I like to be in control of everything. I like to be like, okay, come at 12, but leave it 2. You know what I mean? That's enough for me. So maybe you're right.
Do you debate ever? Well, maybe 2:30.
Of course, do I debate ever? I did this literally yesterday for my daughter's birthday party. I'm like,
same with my daughter. Okay, so she's like, it's not your birthday party. You don't have to do anything anymore. I'm 14. And I'm like, well, still, there's going to be parent pickup.
Yeah.
And I have to know, what's the window and how much small talk will there need to be? So yeah, that's very interesting. Yeah. But the pandemic in that way, I feel guilty saying it. I want to make it clear, there's nothing good about what we've all been through, but there have been some silver linings, I guess you could say. And I think one of them for me has been that time where you don't have to do those things and you can read more and you can think more. And, and I don't know about you, but just, we never really, we had dinner together as a family loosely, but it was more like standing around the kitchen counter and serving yourself, and maybe 3 people were sitting down and someone else was off at a piano lesson and since the spring of last year, we eat dinner together as family, 5 days a week. And so that's all in our case was just pretty much all pandemic driven, all COVID driven. So yeah, obviously I would gladly give up all the family dinners to have all those, people not have had to suffer the way they have, but there have been some silver linings, and I'm not looking forward to this fall of the full on return to all of it.
My husband's mother and grandmother passed away from COVID, and we were in charge of their care. And it was his mother had this 6-week protracted horrific illness. And anyway, it was awful. And then of course you finish all that, and we were still in the middle of the pandemic, so anyway, but not to say, I know now I'm spilling my life story. I feel so bad. I should not even be recording this. It's a conversation just between the two of us, but yeah. But anyway, but yes, I still feel the same as you do. There were
benefits to sort of taking up time out from life for everybody on the planet. Like how could it not be, especially for people who are like happy to think things through and like regroup and figure out what's important and what gives our lives purpose and meaning. And I don't know, I started like driving my little guys to school and like doing like the school drop off recently. And I was just like, this is what I'm so excited about. This is back to normal. Like why I miss this? This is terrible. Like, like, is this all there is now that life is back, that I have to cross this park like 1,000 more times this year? I don't know. It's like, it makes you wonder.
No, I know. Have you read Amanda Kloots' book yet?
I'm interviewing her tomorrow on Instagram Live.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Oh.
Is today Wednesday?
Well,
yeah. Tomorrow at like 5 or 6 or something. How about you? Did you read it?
I'm in the middle of reading it. I just got it, so I adore her, and talk about finding the silver linings and the positive. And she and her sister are just both so amazing and such an inspiration. So yeah, I mean, for her to be able to, well, for you to have lost people, and for her to be able to say, you know, that there were moments of beauty over the past years. Like really, it says a lot about how strong you guys are.
Well,
yeah, she's amazing. So that's going to be a great interview. I'm excited for you to.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too. Yeah. Anyway, back to your career and everything. So what are you working on next? What books do you have in the pipeline? Like, what are you excited about?
Well, let's see. The Lies That Bind is actually, we're working on making that into a limited series.
Nice.
So with the same producers who did Something Borrowed, Molly and Rachel Smith, Black Label Media. So we have an actress, and I guess for some reason it's not time to announce that yet, but an actress I think is wonderful and will really nail Cecily. So really excited about that, and just kind of putting some of the pieces of it together. And so that's one thing, you know, that project. There's a few other sort of film and TV things I'm working on, but for the most part, I'm always most focused, you know, other than my motherhood sort of duties and that part of my life. My main focus is always just the next novel. You know, I really admire these authors who are able to write their book and adapt something that they wrote before, and, you know, have sort of one hand in LA and be working that. But I'm more like calling the producers and my friends and saying like, what have you guys done? Like, what's the next step? For me, that's, you know, I just prefer, maybe again, it's that introvert piece, but just working on my next novel. So that's what I'm mostly doing, is writing right now. And that'll be due in the fall, and the book will come out next summer. So relationship driven story, as all of mine are, about the messiness of relationships and, you know, finding yourself as you fall in love and fall out of love and fall back in love. And so a lot of those themes are, you know, ones that I often explore, along with, you know, this idea of forgiveness and forgiving ourselves and forgiving others, and that we're all, you know, the characters in The Lies That Bind, of course, did some things that some people can't forgive them for. Some readers are, you know, saying, oh, I couldn't stand, like I didn't like him or her at the end. And, you know, that's always, I know, a risk that I'm taking with this kind of stories that I tell, and the situations that I put my characters in. I feel that they're good people, and that they're, you know, they make unsympathetic choices at times, but I think they've all are like good people at heart, which really is how I think of people, all of us. You know, like if you line up all of our choices that we've made, I mean, there's some really, you know, unsympathetic ones, and there are times that we needed to be forgiven, and other times where we're forgiving others. And I think that's sort of the journey of what it's all about. This life is just so, you know, messy and complicated, and, you know, we're all sort of these works in progress. So those are always, you know, the things I like to explore with my characters, even at the risk of sometimes making them unlikable. But the way I see it is, if I could write a story about a girl falling in love with her best friend's fiance and having an affair with him in the months leading up to a wedding, and having the groom-to-be have an affair with his, you know, fiance's best friend, and I can make people like them more than they liked the bride-to-be, then, you know, I'm always hopeful that there's help for all of us and any one of my characters. So that's always in the back of my mind. I mean, people forgave Rachel, so it always surprises me, though, what people are more judgmental about, you know, readers and people in real life. You know, my sister and my mother and my friends and I are harsher critics about. And the two books that I wrote where I feel like they were the very harshest about my heroines, were Baby Proof, where the first line of that book is, I never wanted to be a mother. And I remember, that book came out in 2007 when 2007 when my daughter was born. So I had 3 under 3. And, it begs the question, why was I writing about a woman who didn't want to be a mother, right? Because I could certainly relate to the value of having a child-free life rather than a childless life. But no, I remember my editor saying, you cannot make Claudia, you cannot redeem her past after that first sentence, if I never wanted to be a mother. Like, she's unlikable from out of the gate. I'm like, well, that's what the story is about. And I'm going to try to make her, likable. But that to me was so interesting and said so much about sort of the last taboo, not to talk about a book that came out in 2007, but I am working on the film version of that with some friends. And I think that's changing a little bit how we view that statement and our reaction to that statement. But I think in many ways, we still have that sort of bias against women who feel that way. And it's like one thing if you can't have them, right? And then you're sort of like this objective, she wasn't able to, she did in vitro 5 times, didn't work out. But the women who are just like, no, not interested, I feel like we're still judging them more harshly. But to think that woman could have been judged more harshly than a woman who's having an affair behind her best friend's back, I don't know. That was interesting. And the other one was a girl who fell in love with her best friend's father, but there was no infidelity in that book because the mother had died. But people were like, oh, that's so gross. They're 20 years age difference or whatever. And that one surprised me too. But that to me is really the fun as an author and in many ways, like, other than just like creating this world, this fictional world where you don't have to do an end time. You don't have to say 12 to 2, Zibby. You just close your laptop and you're done with them for the day. You don't have to do the endless goodbyes and, okay, well, it's good seeing you. You just close the laptop.
Yeah.
But the other, I think, really fun part about writing for me is that whole thing of like, life is messy. Let's explore it. Maybe they won't be redeemed in the eyes of all readers, but hopefully at the very least, I'm able to make people see their point of view a little more, which I think like it all comes down to that, right? I mean, empathy in life and fiction is just sort of like seeing things from another point of view. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, first, nobody knows what people are really going through. I mean, in real life, right? You can only judge on the surface. Okay. Last question, because I could like continue this for way too long. What advice would you have for aspiring authors?
Okay. So one thing that I hear a lot of writers say is like, I'm an aspiring writer. And I'm glad that you said aspiring author, because if you're writing at all, you're already a writer, And so I think it's important to remember that getting published is sort of, it's a lot of like dumb luck involved with that. We've all read books that we think are terrible or that we didn't like. And for every one of those books, there's this like sparkling, near perfect manuscript that just never saw the light of day because, maybe the editor who read it had already bought something like that a month before, and she didn't want 2 books about a cheating fiance or, and the person gave up or they got married and had a kid and they didn't, return to it or something. There's just so many. I guess what I'm saying is, if you're rejected along the way, you're still a writer. Your voice is still valid and important. And, if it's important to you to get published, like pursue it, like continue it, like be dogged about it. Like the people who run a marathon, if we lined up our friends, I've never run a marathon. Zibby, have you? Okay, good. Another thing, I was like, please say no, please say no. No. But, some of our friends who have run a marathon aren't necessarily the most like athletic, or the most,
right.
But they do it because they decide to do it. So I feel like that analogy is important. Like if you really want to publish, just stay after it and believe in yourself and don't let your sort of identity turn on these artificial answers that you're getting from other people, because it's not like they're not turning you down, and they're not even turning like your writing down. They're just saying, this isn't commercially viable for me this week. It's really, I think that's important to remember that for those who want to be published. And there's so many writers out there who it's not terribly important, to get that, the validation or or to share the story with the world. They're doing it for themselves. So I would say that's probably my biggest piece of advice, to just believe in yourself and keep writing and do what you love, no matter what that is. But like you're doing, Zibby, I cannot wait for your book.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so excited.
Oh my gosh. I just recently, this is my last thing and I'll let you go, but I just joined Noom, the like weight loss app. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Of course.
Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
I like decided to try it. Anyway, they said like the number one predictor of whether or not it would work for you is if you believe it will work for you.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was like, and that's it. That's all you have to do is believe it. And how easy is that? So I felt like that was so applicable to writing. I mean,
yes.
If you believe at one point you are going to publish your book,
yes.
you probably will. But you have to believe it. And if you don't, then forget it.
Then you probably won't.
Then you almost definitely won't. Like if you don't believe it.
Won't. You might. Because I don't know that I believed that I would publish something bird, but I hoped and occasionally believed it, which might be good enough. Like occasionally.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, you believed you would write something that was worth seeing, because that's why, like, you just knew it, like
on some level. But now I have to check out Noom too for this.
Noom is great. Yeah. I don't know. It's been 5 days, but so far so good. So
but the pandemic, maybe it's also just like the amount of wine that I've consumed in the past year is maybe if I just quit with that would be a great start.
That's why I started Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight, because I had like all this pandemic weight and I was like, I can't be the only one, am I? Turns out no.
No,
anyway.
You're not.
Anyway, all right. Well, this was so fun. Thank you. I just like hung out with a new friend or whatever. But
I know I feel the same.
So
you can be my mentee since you're 5 years younger.
I will gladly be your mentee. You can show me the ropes. I would love it.
I'm totally kidding. I could learn so much more from you. But thank you so much for having me on. I enjoyed it so much. And tell Amanda I said hi.
I will. Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Okay. Thanks, Debbie. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.